The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI...
Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, "Violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible," close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with, and therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk. I should know, about 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took to Truth Social to call me a, quote, "psychopathic nutjob," among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimicked some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right. The attack on Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There's too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69% of the violence is from the right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI, I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, "Trump Invokes Kirk's Killing and Justifying Measures to Silence Opponents." In the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, President Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you. Politicizing the murder of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have wanted. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. This section's work has been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the Public Integrity Section has now been decimated, and the FBI's Public Corruption Squad has been dismantled. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, "FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad." I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and politicize prosecutorial decisions. And I ask unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I can.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate.
The hearing reached its most charged moment when Congressman Jerry Nadler looked directly at Director Patel and asked a question that felt both simple and seismic. Do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right? It came after a cascade of accusations, personal testimony, and sharp rebukes, a moment when rhetoric collided with reality. Nadler began by invoking the tragic killing of Charlie Kirk and quoting former President Donald Trump's assertion that violence is the consequence of demonizing political opponents. Then, with unmistakable intensity, Nadler turned that logic back toward Trump himself, arguing that the same language of condemnation and insult can create an atmosphere where threats flourish. He described receiving a note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful language, echoing phrases he attributed to the president's own public statements. It was no longer abstract, it was personal, and in that chamber, the issue was no longer partisan talking points. It was about responsibility. When Nadler asked whether there is political violence on both sides, he was not asking for nuance. He was demanding clarity. Director Patel responded cautiously, "There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side." It was a careful answer, a balanced answer. But it was also an answer that reflected the delicate position federal officials now occupy, navigating a nation where trust in institutions is fragile and accusations of bias come from every direction. The exchange revealed something deeper about this moment in American history. Political violence is no longer discussed in whispers. It is debated in open hearings. It is cited in committee transcripts. It is linked to speeches, posts, and televised remarks. And each side accuses the other of fueling it. Nadler listed incidents that have shaken the country: the killing of Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of a former president, the attack on Paul Pelosi, the assault on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, and the murder of a state legislative leader. The message was clear: violence is not hypothetical. It has crossed thresholds, it has disrupted lives, institutions, and the very sense of civic stability Americans once took for granted. But the hearing did not stop at violence. It pivoted to power. Nadler accused the administration of exploiting tragedy to justify broader measures, monitoring speech, revoking visas, labeling groups as domestic threats. He entered into the record a New York Times article alleging plans to target political opponents under the banner of security. Patel responded narrowly, insisting that the FBI was not engaged in suppressing liberty. "I speak for the FBI," he said. And there it was again, the tension between agency and administration, between law enforcement and politics, between institutional mission and executive influence. The final segment of the exchange turned to corruption. Nadler raised concerns that the FBI's elite public corruption squad had been dismantled, that the Department of Justice's public integrity section had been weakened. He invoked Watergate, a historical scar that reshaped federal oversight decades ago, and warned that dismantling these safeguards sends a dangerous signal. In his words, it becomes an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law. These are not small claims. They cut to the core of how the republic governs itself. If violence is rising from ideological extremes, and if corruption oversight is perceived to be diminishing, the twin pillars of democracy, accountability and stability, begin to tremble. Citizens lose confidence not only in leaders, but in the mechanisms designed to restrain them. Yet in the midst of accusation and counter-accusation, one truth stood out. Political violence exists. It has emerged from different ideological corners, and the refusal to acknowledge it consistently only deepens the divide. The challenge facing America is not simply to condemn acts after they occur. It is to confront the climate that allows them to multiply. Words matter, leadership matters, enforcement matters, oversight matters. When elected officials trade insults, when executive power expands without scrutiny, when institutions are perceived as selective in their vigilance, the public begins to question whether the rules apply equally to all. This hearing was not just about one statement or one study. It was about whether the guardians of federal authority can speak plainly about danger without weaponizing it. Whether they can investigate corruption without fear or favor. Whether they can defend liberty without undermining security. In a nation founded on ordered liberty, the balance is delicate. Too much force erodes freedom. Too little accountability invites decay. And when rhetoric replaces responsibility, citizens are left wondering who, if anyone, is standing watch. The exchange between Nadler and Patel will fade from the news cycle, but the questions it raised will not. Is violence a bipartisan problem? Are institutions strong enough to withstand political pressure? Are those in power willing to be scrutinized as rigorously as those they investigate? History shows that democracies endure not because they are free from conflict, but because they confront it honestly. They survive because oversight is preserved, because speech remains protected, and because the rule of law stands above partisan advantage. In the end, this was more than a hearing. It was a mirror held up to the nation, a reflection of polarization, a test of institutional integrity, and a reminder that democracy is not self-sustaining. It requires vigilance from leaders and citizens alike. The future of American governance will not be decided in one exchange, but it will be shaped by whether moments like this lead to greater transparency, deeper accountability, and a renewed commitment to principle over politics. Stay informed, stay engaged, and continue to demand clarity from those who hold power. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.